If you think mindfulness is just a whole load of woo-woo nonsense for hippies and weirdos, think again. There is so much science-backed research to show that mindfulness not only helps with our mental well-being, but our physical well-being too. And in this video, I'm going to be exploring why we should all be using mindfulness practices to help us in our day-to-day business. Hi, I'm Bev. I'm a business mentor and a coach, and I'm joined today by my lovely friend, Deborah Bircham. Deborah is a holistic therapist, a psychotherapist, a hypnotherapist, and a mindfulness teacher who not only uses mindfulness practices to help her clients cope with chronic long-term illnesses, but has also used mindfulness practices to manage her own long-term health and well-being as someone who has a long-term chronic condition. In particular, though, we're looking at practical ways that you as an entrepreneur or a business owner can use mindfulness techniques to help you be more productive, reduce overwhelm, and generally just be healthier and happier. Let's dive in.
Okay, so yes, I am a naturopathic nutrition and health coach. I'm a mindfulness teacher, and I'm a hypnotherapist and psychotherapist. And I specialize in supporting people predominantly with complex chronic health conditions, long-term health conditions, and chronic pain. As a result of my own experience, lived experience with chronic illness and chronic pain, I've been on my own health journey all my life, really. So I bring all my lived experience combined with my trainings, and I particularly have found mindfulness to be so helpful for me with my health, but also now with the trials and tribulations of running a business, particularly when technology doesn't work, mindfulness really comes into its own. So I really value that sort of the tools that I've learned to help me with my own sort of well-being. And so I'm looking forward to maybe sharing some of those with all of you in the group over the next few weeks, over Thursday morning.
Yeah, I mean, you just have such a wealth of knowledge, and like you say, you've got your lived experience that, you know, drives you to want to do this to support other people. Now, some of our group members possibly don't have chronic illnesses, so what's the benefit of these mindful moments that we're putting together? What are people going to get from them if they're sat thinking, do you know what, I don't have a chronic illness, I'm fine, what's the point?
Yeah, so mindfulness isn't just for chronic illness. That's what I specialize in, but mindfulness is for everyone, and it's really valuable. I think of it like the sort of the instruction manual or shortcuts for your mind, to help your mind to give you the best and to support you in the best way possible. So it helps us to cope with all sorts of trivial little everyday irritations, right up to the massive kind of life-changing events, any kind of stressful situation, and also, as I said, the trials and tribulations of running a business. So we can use these tools that, you know, form part of mindfulness to keep us calm in the present moment. And also, when we practice them regularly, it builds up our stress tolerance, our resilience, and it helps to connect us to our prefrontal cortex. Basically, there's lots of amazing studies about the neuroscience of mindfulness and what's actually happening in our brains when we practice these tools. And it switches on that wise, rational, calm brain at the front where we have all our intelligence, and it kind of strengthens our connection with that part of our brain and calms down the kind of wild, stress, anxious, panicky kind of part of our brain, so we don't get so much of that stress and anxiety feeling. We can cope with difficulty much better. We can make better decisions. We can stay present with our, you know, with our intelligent brain, which helps us, you know, with all sorts of things, particularly running a business. You want to be able to, in a stressful situation, stay with your prefrontal cortex as much as you can. So by doing these practices regularly, it helps us with that. But also I feel really strongly that, you know, having been through my own health issues, one of the things that I've learned is the importance of taking care of ourselves and spending some time, even just a few moments a day, on self-care and building that into your daily routine. And it's so important when we run a business. Life is very busy, it's stressful, there's lots going on, everyone's juggling so many things. The self-care kind of aspect of what do I need and how do I look after myself kind of gets trampled in the rush and forgotten about, I think, so often for us, particularly as women. I think we have so many pulls on us with all sorts of things happening with us. So I think it's really important to learn some tools that work for you. And I'm really about making mindfulness practice accessible and making it doable, because I think the normal kind of mindfulness trainings that people teach are very sort of didactic and sort of controlling in a way. You have to sit cross-legged on a mat with your eyes shut, focus on your breath, sit there for an hour, and that feels really inaccessible for lots and lots of people. It doesn't fit into their lifestyle. They've maybe tried it before and found that that just didn't work for them. So I really want to make mindfulness realistic and teach people really short tools and share different techniques that people can choose from and find the one that works for them. So I use all sorts of body-based practices, some breath work, some sensory practices. And I think, the important thing is to find something that really nourishes you and that helps you to ground and to connect with yourself, and then to build that into your day. And if it's just 10 minutes or even a couple of minutes of practice, that really helps.
Yeah, that's something I was thinking, when you're in the flow of a busy day and you've got appointments and you've got emails to respond to, you know what it's like when you're running a business. It's quite hard, isn't it, to go, right, I'm just going to stop the busyness and do something that feels almost, it can feel a bit indulgent, can't it, to stop and take that time. So you've talked about, shifting us out of that monkey brain that's on emotional overdrive, normally sort of forward catastrophizing on what things could, what's coming up, all the fires we need to fight, and actually getting us back into that prefrontal cortex, that lovely executive part of the brain that actually gets the stuff done. How can we persuade people that actually sometimes you have to slow down to speed up? Because I know what it's like. It reminds me of like when you've got a long journey but you're desperate for the loo and you're thinking, do you know what, I'm just going to keep going because I don't want to stop, but it's so uncomfortable and actually it's so distracting. I don't know if that's a bad analogy or not, but how are we going to persuade people that they need to take, if nothing else, your mindful moment on a Thursday?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think that's a brilliant analogy. So, I mean, lots of reasons, really. There's lots of hard evidence now. There's lots of studies, scientific research that is showing that when we practice these practices, it actually helps us to be more productive. It helps us to get more done. For example, there's a really lovely study that shows that when we forgive ourselves rather than beating ourselves up for mistakes, we're actually less likely to make that mistake again than if we beat ourselves up. There's something about that makes it more likely that we're going to keep making that mistake. So these practices have got a lot of science behind them, that it actually helps us to achieve more and to be better in our lives and our businesses. So that investment in yourself is actually, it's productive. You can think of that time. We have this mentality in our society that doing nothing is a waste, and it is kind of, self-indulgent, as you say. And actually the science is showing us that that's wrong, and that doing nothing is actually really, really powerful and beneficial for us when we do these kind of relaxation practices. So there's a lot of scientific evidence around it. It helps you to get more done. But also, I think from my perspective, you know, working with the population that I do, I've heard so many times, and even in my own experience, the story that I hear over and over again is, I worked so hard, I pushed myself, I worked all these hours, and now I feel dreadful and I'm suffering with health problems. And you know, people regret not taking care of themselves. And so I think if you're in the position now where, you know, you're well and you're healthy, that is such a precious, precious gift. And if you don't take care of that and look after yourself and invest in your own well-being, you know, you can't give the best to your business if you are, you know, struggling and if your health deteriorates. So now is the time to invest in yourself and protect yourself for the sake of your business and for the sake of your future health.
It's interesting, isn't it? We take out business insurance, we take out house insurance, contents insurance, to almost, we protect our hardware outside more than we protect the most important element of our business. And of course, if you're a one person band, a micro business, solopreneur, whatever term you want to use, we are the most important asset in our business. Without us, we don't have a business, and yet we don't always invest that same level of insurance in the vessel that's carrying the business.
Yeah.
So I have got a question for you though, because I find I have ADHD, as you know, and I know you are also very cognizant of neurodiversity when it comes to mindfulness practices. So there are some things that I struggle with. Focus is very hard. I find it, and I know mindfulness isn't about switching the brain off, but I do find it very hard to focus. I also find it quite hard if I take a break to then get back into what I'm doing. And the third thing that I find quite difficult is a lot of mindfulness practices that I've been taught in the past have been around breathing techniques that mean I have to hold my breath. And I find I have this sort of mild induced panic when I have to hold my breath. And I think when we were talking yesterday, what I loved about your approach was, nothing is wrong. You know, you're never getting it wrong. If a certain technique or a certain exercise doesn't work for you, you're not broken. It's not your failing. It's just we're all different. So I'd love you just to kind of expand on that a little bit, and I guess reassure people that there's something for everybody in mindfulness. I think I've just answered your question for you, but there you go. You can you will articulate it far better than I can.
Oh, no, you've said it all, really. There is something for everybody. What I share with people is, you know, a variety of different techniques. And that is, you know, in the hope that you only need one thing really to land for you, and that's your thing. And everybody can find their mindfulness their own way. So I've done a lot of training in neurodiversity informed mindfulness, but that really is applicable to everybody. The thing about mindfulness practice is it's unique for you. So it's about finding the practice, the type of practice that works for you. And some people, or a lot of people really, struggle with the breath. The breath is not a safe place for a lot of people, which is why mindfulness does feel inaccessible for a lot of people, particularly if we have anxiety, or if we, you know, have neurodiversity, or if there's any trauma in our past. Sitting with the breath can feel really triggering. So some of my practices are breath work practices because that's, you know, a big part of mindfulness, but there are lots of other ways of engaging with mindfulness that are not based on the breath. And so I'll be sharing some different tools, that are not breath based, or that are, combinations. And the idea is that you can pick, if you like the breath and the breath works for you, then stay with the breath. If the breath is not comfortable for you, and it changes day by day. Yesterday, breath might work for you. Today, you're thinking, oh no, this is not working. That's okay. We'll do something different. There's a different options for people, and it's finding what works for you, doing the practice that works for you. And the most mindful thing, and the self-kindness thing about mindfulness, is listening to your body. And if the breath is not where you're at today, the kindest and most mindful thing you can do is to say, this isn't right for me today. Maybe I need a walk instead, or maybe I focus on, my feet on the ground, or maybe I'm going to do some listening practice. So, it's choosing the tools that work for you, and it doesn't have to be stationary. I know a lot of people, they move, they find relaxation through movement, and the idea of sitting still all the time is actually quite stressful. So mindfulness can be done in a moving way. You can do moving mindfulness, which again is, for some people, that's their thing.
Lovely. And I think, so over the weeks, you're going to be with us every Thursday morning, but that doesn't mean to say that people can't use what you're teaching anytime, every day, a couple of times a day if they want to. But you will be with us on a Thursday morning at 10 o'clock live in the group. So if anybody's around, obviously, as I said yesterday, if you're right in the middle of a client meeting, or you're delivering coaching or training, you can't really stop and say, I'm just going to jump onto Deborah's mindfulness session, unless it might help your client. Who knows? But if you're available, definitely join, because as well as the different techniques that you're going to teach over the course of the weeks, because obviously you can't throw them all in at once, but they'll build, so people will get almost an arsenal of different tools and techniques that they can use. But there's also, I've asked Deborah to include just a little bit of mindset stuff in there as well, maybe just a couple of minutes. Most of us know the things we need to be thinking to make us feel better, but when we're in the thick of life, sometimes we forget. So, just a reminder with a tip or two around resilience, or a tip or two about, self-belief, or overcoming some of those self-doubts. I don't want to dictate what Deborah does, because she's the expert in this area, but it's more than just the tool, and it'll be about 10-15 minutes, so it's not going to be a big chunk of your day. It's amazing what you can do in a very small space of time. And yesterday, talking about the breath, as I said earlier, I panic a little bit on exercises where I have to hold my breath. So box breathing, for example, where you breathe in and you have to hold it, then you breathe out and you hold it at the bottom of the breath, induces quite a lot of discomfort in me. But you did something yesterday called lotus breathing, and I just thought it was beautiful. In fact, I used it yesterday when I got home. It was so simple. So can I ask you now, just to give us a little bit of a taster of an exercise maybe that we can dive into straight away?
Yeah, absolutely. Shall I teach you the lotus flower breathing?
Well, why not? I loved it, and it was so simple. So yeah, why not?
Yeah, let's do that then. So this is a really good one if you have a really busy brain, and also if you struggle maybe to keep your attention on the breath, and you find that it's not enough to hold your attention, your mind wanders a lot. You can combine, so what we call it's dual focus. So there are 2 points of focus that we're using to bring us into that present moment state. And so this is the lotus flower. We put our hand into this position with the fingers together.
Okay, I'm going to describe this, because I might put this into a podcast. Actually, I haven't asked your permission yet, but if I get the permission, I might put this into a podcast. So we're holding our hand with sort of all of the tips of the fingers and the thumb coming together like a closed bud of a lotus flower, I guess.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's pinching our fingers and thumbs together. Yeah. So we hold our hand in that position, and then as we breathe in, we open the hand like the lotus flower opening. And as we breathe out, we close the fingers back together again, and the lotus flower closes. And the idea is to focus on synchronizing the movement of your hand and your breath. So as you're breathing in, you open, and as you're breathing out, you close.
Eyes open or closed, or does it not matter?
Doesn't matter at all, whatever works for you. Try it both ways and do whatever works best for you. Some people like to watch the fingers, and there's a third point of focus there, that you're using your sight and the breath and the movement. And you can do it with one hand or both hands. And you can notice if there's a difference between each hand. Just noticing the sensation of the air and the movement of the fingers. And synchronizing them both together. Keeping your hand and your breathing perfectly in sync with one another. And breathing in and breathing out naturally, however your breath comes. You're not forcing anything. Not trying to change anything, just focusing our awareness on that movement of the hand as we breathe in and out. And then whenever you're ready, you can stop the practice.
Do you know what I like about that? For me, with a neurodivergent brain, when I'm just focusing on the breath and nothing else is moving, it's purely my brain that's focusing on the breathing coming in and out. I get so distracted. I can't focus. But whether there's something about that the physical movement, that kind of rhythm of the hands moving in and out. And I definitely found it nicer with my eyes closed. And the reason being, I kept looking at my hands and thinking, God, they're wrinkly. And which is probably quite mindful, but a bit judgmental.
You
So
see,
I just found it easier to have the movement with my eyes closed, which is interesting, isn't it?
it is, yes, it allows you. A lot of people find that with their eyes closed, you can connect more with the sensations in your body and with, that the practice, and also that judgment. We'll talk about that over the weeks, but that's really normal, and that's your sort of busy mind sort of kicking in, and we're working in mindfulness practice to notice that happening and then let that judgment go. So if you close your eyes, there's less chance of that distraction and your mind jumping in. But yeah, it helps you. Staying with the breath is quite hard. Your mind wanders off, but when you give your mind something else to focus on as well, so it's concentrating on two different points of focus, it helps to keep it anchored where you want it to be. So
yeah, absolutely brilliant. I love that. And I think it's so simple, isn't it? It's not something you have to kind of get changed for. You don't have to go anywhere to do it. And actually, I'm guessing even if you were in company, if, with your hand under the desk or somewhere where it's perhaps not as visible, because you might feel a little bit odd doing this, but just take a moment with your hand sort of obscured by a desk or a computer or whatever. You just take it. And how many do we need to be doing? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter at all. It's about what feels good for you. And obviously, the slightly longer practices, the more benefits you're going to get. But the key thing is to do it. If you have 30 seconds to spend doing that, whilst you're at your desk, between calls even, a minute, it doesn't, that is going to have benefit for you. It's just regularly, it's much better to have lots of little breaks during the day than it is to try and sit for a whole hour once a week, for example. If you do like 1 minute of lotus flower breathing every single day, that gives you enormous benefit. Just stepping out of that busyness and having a little break regularly. If you can do, you know, a minute in the morning and a minute in the evening, amazing.
Yeah.
You know, so just
I've
fit
just
it
had a
in.
thought. So if we do that lotus breathing sort of action regularly, I'm just thinking in terms of sort of practical applications for this as well. So if you're going into a sales call that maybe you're a little bit nervous about, or you're about to do a live stream, and you're a little bit nervous, or you're about to go and do a talk or something, so I'm an NLP practitioner. I'm just thinking about anchoring, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with anchoring. If whether the repeated practice of going through that calming moment, if just that motion of moving your hands in that lotus position would actually anchor that calming feeling in you. You're nodding, so I think I might be on the right track here.
Yeah, absolutely. Your brain is neuroplastic and it learns. So if you teach your brain that when you do that, you know, you get all these lovely good feelings of calm and relaxation, your brain will associate that movement with those feelings, and you can anchor a state absolutely into that. And so it's really you know, the more often we repeat this, the brain is learning all the time. One of the things to do with mindfulness practices is to notice how you feel, and not just sort of think, right, I've done that now and I'm straight into back into my calls or whatever. Take a moment to just think, yes, I feel relaxed. That was lovely. I feel, you know, that feels nice. And anchor those positive feelings so that your brain notices that when we do this practice, it feels good. So those two things become connected in your mind and associated really strongly. So like you say, it's then available to you whenever you want to do that. You have that practice, and it's lovely because you don't, as you say, you don't need anything. You always have your hand with you. You've always got your breath with you. You can do it in a supermarket queue, you know, whilst no one's looking. Just have your hand even down by your side and do the movement whilst you're breathing. No one needs to know you're doing it. And yeah, you can just use that as a tool whenever you
Brilliant.
need.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, Deborah, thank you very much. And I'm so excited that you're going to be supporting us in the Working with Corporates project. Because I just think this is such an important part of being a solopreneur, is this sort of sense of constant overwhelm and, you know, fighting fires all of the time. And sometimes we just need that moment to step back. So thank you so much for doing this. Great, lovely. We'll talk to you soon.
Super. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.